Warning: the podcast you are about to listen to discusses films on the basis of the craft of screenwriting. It contains spoilers. Films discussed may also contain offensive content.
In this episode, we'll be discussing Belle, released in 2021, and The Exorcism of Emily Rose, released in 2005.
Hey, welcome to, I don't even know what number we're at now.
Let me see. I think we're episode 6, I think.
6 or 7.
6 or 7.
We might even be at 7.
If we got it wrong, there'll be like me recording like a filler bit here. It's like, oh, actually, it's like episode 12. We've been doing this for way too long.
At any rate, the people who clicked on it know what it is, and so that knowledge is safe with them. Episode whatever of Jay and Dave Went to Film School podcast.
Yeah, and if you're still listening, this many episodes into our podcast, thank you. It's glad to have an audience that's still sticking by and wanted to hear both me and Jason's voice.
Yeah, it's great to have the 2 or 3 of you that are really feeling sorry enough for us to continue to listen.
Sorry, no, I think they are like genuinely enthralled by the way your dulcet tones land on their eardrums and the insightful and witty commentary that I always provide.
And yet we'll keep on, struggling away, regardless, even, if it's a few people.
Not to be a downer, but like, I think in times like this, a little bit of entertainment is what we need, especially with the, the recent news of stuff that's just dropped. I don't know if you want to keep talking about, we talked about a little bit, but big world events have happened.
Events ensue as they commonly do and have done before.
It's the sequel nobody expected, but everybody wanted, apparently.
There are oftentimes demand for sequels.
Yeah.
That is, hopefully it doesn't follow the trend. Obviously, we're talking about the recent American election, although you wouldn't necessarily know that. Whenever this is airing, it might be months after the fact.
Well, maybe we should do the Simpsons thing, where as filmmakers, adjacent TV writers, we should predict what's going to be happening in the 4 months when this episode airs.
Oh, yeah, maybe we should. That would be fun. It's kind of scary. Like, it could be quite a downer.
Because it'd be like, obviously it'd be great to do like the very like widespread like policies, right? Like, oh, Donald Trump's gonna like add like 15 million into the U.S. budget. But I like making very specific guesses. Like, here's my prediction: 5 months,
Sure.
5 months from now, electric scooters banned. I don't think Trump wants them.
Have you heard that?
No, I'm just guessing, just off the cuff.
Oh.
I think
No, but what's your basis?
my
I'm
basis
curious.
is that number one, Donald Trump is, I don't think he likes green policies, and electric scooters are supposed to be like a very green thing. And like number two, I feel like enough people who don't like green policies and don't like electric scooters at all are gonna be like, hey Trump, get rid of these things. They're not helpful to anybody, right? Then like number three, like Trump's gonna look at like electric scooter like funds and like the economy of like electric scooters. Be like, the only people who ride these things are like hipsters. Like, no, nobody. This is not contributing to any economy. And so, full widespread ban, electric scooters gone. I would fully agree with Donald Trump's policy to ban electric scooters.
The only thing that might interfere with that is that because him and Elon Musk are buddies now. I mean, Musk is all about electric vehicles, so there might be some pushback. They might come up to a different agreement.
No, because here's the thing: because Elon Musk doesn't have an electric scooter right now, if he does release a fully like publicly rentable, fully electric, green piece of like, I don't know, 80s kids transportation, I feel like it would have to be the skateboard. He just seems like so young and hip. He wants to be like a Tony Hawk adjacent kind of person. He would give free electric skateboards to the people. And Donald Trump would be like, yeah, I'm also totally hip and cool. Skateboards for everybody.
That's right. Like, you get the sense that it could go either way with some of that stuff. Whatever puffs up that ego the most, it could go that way. But it is entirely possible that the economy improves over the next 4 months. Apparently the markets were up immediately after the election result.
Yeah, like that was actually really cool. My dad literally made $3,000 in like one day on his stock portfolio the moment Donald Trump won. So I'm like, hey, thanks for that, dude.
So many interesting positives versus negatives with politics in general. One of the reasons I don't talk about it too much, but there's definitely positives and negatives.
Yeah. Ooh, you should give your Simpson prediction. Yeah, don't try too hard. It's like, oh, Donald Trump legalizes fishing in the Great Lakes, or like, you know, he imposes a height ban on giant California sequoia trees. They can no longer be that tall.
I don't. I think about this too literally. I think.
Yeah.
He's pretty a bit too buddy with Putin, and so I fear like some of the world repercussions on the European stage that might happen. Although, so ironically, that he might get the war to end, but it would be by conceding too much to Putin, and then Ukraine is all of a sudden thrown under the bus.
So your 5-month prediction is that Donald Trump and Putin will have a fully Renaissance-style watercolor painting of them together. Almost like American couple, like him standing in the background, Putin in a chair. I'd pay to see that painting, honestly.
Technically, with the power of AI, we could actually see a mock-up of that, which is also a segue into something else we wanted to talk about.
Which is the more prevalent use of AI in our industries, right?
A huge issue, which has hit kind of almost every walk of life, and the screenwriting industry is not the least of those areas.
And it especially impacts both live action and animation particularly.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, the technology is able to recreate any existing content or person, both image and voice. Definitely a need for personal protections for actors. I think it needs to be controlled. I think it's something that you're never going to get away from technology. Technology is here to stay. It's about how do we control industries sufficiently so that you're not being completely controlling or implementing rules that you can't control, and that you give artists proper rights.
And then, yes, in my industry, of course, there the WGA, which is the Writers Guild of America, and SAG-AFTRA as well, and the WGA, Writers Guild of Animation, I believe. Yeah. But they're protesting right now for, I think, less use of AI in their industry, more job security for their jobs, because not only are these humans, but these are humans that love animation. And unfortunately, with all the mind power and Einstein-esque innovation we can put into AI, I don't think we could ever give robots love to what they're doing. Humans, honestly, are very, very passionate. And the loss of something like Cartoon Network is honestly still something that still really, really saddens me, because like both as a filmmaker and a consumer of all these shows, that sheer loss of both creativity and also just content and the refinish is just super huge, even though it feels like a very minuscule part of the entertainment world.
Yeah, there's definitely something lost when you rely on AI for content, big time. Obviously there's some technical, like, impressive things that it can do to say create an image that is a completely newly imagined type of thing. And there's obviously lots to talk about even with image creation, with the issues and protecting artist rights and all that. But when it comes to, say, writing a story, writing a scene from a story, there's something lost when there's a computer doing it instead of a human. Now, in all cases, I think there's going to be simple enough scenes where there's probably you're not going to be able to tell whether it's a human or an AI that writes it. But when you look at a story overall and how things progress, and just the essence of creativity and imagination for both the big picture of what the story is saying and the points along the way that are just born out of the human experience, I think that's going to be lacking. And you're just not going to get as good of a product if you depend on AI.
I was gonna say, like, we could talk like hours on just like the ethicalness and like the moral and the business side of just AI, but do you even think it's like good in the sense of like an aesthetically generating like machine? Like, do you think the content actually like produces is like good in the sense of like a 5-star review scale?
I mean, it all depends on the task you're giving it. There's going to be times when you give it a task and it's going to produce exactly what you're looking for because it's a basic enough task. But one example is its understanding of coding. You can tell it to code a basic website framework, and it can do it like 100% of the time, exactly what you need. And then, of course, you have to populate that website with what you want. Now, you can ask it for the different components too, but it's about the subtasks that kind of get you there that are small enough that it can just execute. And it's almost like it's just a right answer. Like, I need a website with a header, a menu here of these words, and a body area and a footer. There's only one way to do that, and it can do it for you.
I've been using AI just for my own sense of just entertainment, just like mess around with it, see what it can do. I never ever come into it expecting that it'll ever generate something good. Whenever it does, like, even make something remotely funny, I'm like, oh wow, that was impressive in the sense that I didn't expect you to do it. Because I mean, I currently watch a Twitch streamer / YouTuber named Doug, who heavily uses AI as just comedic content. He relies on it for a lot of like his like entertainment sake, but like he's still like his own human. But yeah, whenever he does use it, it's just funny in the sense of like.
But is it in how can I put this? Is are you laughing with it or at it? Like,
it's usually at it because like every single time like I'm in the Twitch chat, everyone's just like jumping on to like the AI story of like, that's funny, I'm gonna keep rolling with that joke, and like the humor always comes out of the human reaction to the AI as opposed to the AI itself sometimes.
Right. Okay. So it is kind of making a caricature of the AI. It's not making good comedy writing. It's basically inept, and then it's fun to see its ineptitude.
Yeah, I think that's mostly where the joke's coming from, because like, the Doug will always like, okay, we're gonna make the AI role play as Napoleon in a chess match. And the AI will go completely off the rails and be like, okay, we're going to convert all the pawns into cannons, and we're going to attack the entire front line of the chessboard. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, Doug's getting destroyed in this chess game by AI Napoleon. That's funny. So, I think in that sense, I think if you can laugh at the AI, that's great. But if you're laughing at what the AI makes in terms of like a actual presentable thing, that's I honestly think you should be laughing at something else. I don't think they actually produce pretty good jokes sometimes.
Well, that's what I was going to say when you talked about the comedy side of things. If there's one thing that I have not seen AI do well, it's comedy. Like,
actually, here's the one thing, right? You could genuinely Google this online. Somebody took all of George Carlin, who is a very, very famous comedian from back in the day and my personal favorite comedian of all time, took all of his sets, fed it into an AI, and had it generate a modern day George Carlin set written in like 2020, right? And I listened to it, and it had the cadence, it had the sound of George Carlin, it had his type of jokes, but like I couldn't find myself laughing at stuff that even I would kind of find funny if I knew it was from Carlin. It felt weird, and I honestly just didn't like it.
So it was a bit uneasy because you knew it was AI.
Yeah.
But do you think the jokes were funny enough to be like to laugh at?
Because like here's the thing, right? If it was Carlin-esque, but it wasn't Carlin. You know what I mean? Like it was doing like the same like satirical kind of pessimistic outlook on life, with the kind of philosophical like aspect that like Carlin always puts into his segments. Like, I think there was, like, one where it's, like... Jeez, it was so, like, long ago, and I didn't care about it too much to even remember it. But, like, I think there was one that was, like, being very self-referential about AI. And it's like, oh, AI is coming to take our jobs, but, like, hey, now humans know what it feels like to be a toaster that can be replaced. just getting a better upgrade. I was like, okay, fair enough. That's kind of how Carlin would look at it, but it was Carlin-esque, but it wasn't him. So even then, I wasn't laughing. I think it was also because they're using a built-in like laugh track as well, and I just don't like laughing when a laugh track's used. But like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, comedy is one of those areas where you can't just explain the rules of comedy to a computer and then it can just create. There's more of a spark needed for comedy, I think.
And I think it's depression. No, honestly, that's actually honestly true for a lot of comedians. But hey. But honestly, I love just an experiment, and like I still like the science aspect of AI, and I still like messing around with it. I still like experimenting with it, just to see the bounds you can test it. So I'd love to see somebody take just a box, just a big box, put it on a stage, put a microphone attached to it, and just see like how many times an actual audience of people will laugh at it.
You never know. Maybe that's coming to a comedy club near you.
Actually, here's my idea. If I ever like get into like comedy and I have the balls to do it, it's gonna be me, and it's gonna be a piece of AI. And it's gonna be a straight man routine where the AI will be the joke telling one, and I'll be the one going there like, huh? What are you talking about? That's not correct politically. You can't be calling bicycles this kind of thing. They're only called bicycles because they have two wheels and not because of their sexual identity. I don't know.
The future. What does the future hold?
I don't know. I mean, to segue from AI to another movie about the virtual world and the innovation of humanity in the future, you watched Belle.
That's the movie that was next on my list from Dave, and it was pretty cool. I have to say, it's a modern retelling of the Beauty and the Beast story. With kind of a unique futuristic context, kind of a metaverse context, and yeah, it was pretty well done, pretty cool. The animation's great. Yeah, really kind of detailed computer CGI for the metaverse content side of things, and then a more classic anime style for the real world content. Let's see what some of my notes were for it. I felt like the concept for the retelling was pretty cool to put it in a kind of dual universe, and where the people that go into the metaverse or the world of you, as it's called in the movie, it's taken from your biometric data, so it gives you your avatar, which was a cool concept because it's not you pick your avatar. It detects you, who you are biometrically, and then gives you a representation in you, and then you're stuck with that. And you never know what you're going to get, but it's kind of based on your real world personality, situation, your kind of makeup. And it's a cool concept because then the people that you meet in the metaverse, they could be represented in all sorts of ways, but it's a representation of how they are in the real world. And then, of course, that works well for Beauty and the Beast because someone who may not be beautiful in the real world from whatever standard is represented very beautifully in the metaverse, which is what Belle was. And then the Beast is exactly that. Internally, they're very conflicted and have stuff going on that's quite rough, turning them into someone unpleasant. In the real world, they're going through that, and that's how they're represented in the metaverse. So cool concept for that retelling. It kind of gives you a cool scale, the feel of putting someone who was very average, we all can associate with the average person, except for the A-list celebrities that are listening to us right now. Might be tough for them, although they've probably experienced in the past,
I still think Tom Hanks is very down to earth, Shout out to Tom Hanks who's currently watching this.
Thanks, Tom. Big fan of the show, we know. They have that cool scale factor of the average person all of a sudden being the number one star in the whole metaverse. So cool to kind of feel that. Really good at conveying the emotion of the main character, Belle, who you feel her loneliness as she's like walking from home to school, and they really present that well. Her fears and her embarrassments. I mean, that's kind of what anime does well in general, is show those average day-to-day exchanges and that are really easy to associate with. And the songs were good, and it had a really good climactic moment. The climactic moment where she has to decide to reveal her identity, to kind of lose the stardom in hopes of reaching the beast, the person who was struggling. So she had to basically give up her fame, so to speak, or at least the mystique that kind of maintained some of that by no one knowing who she was in the real world. And then also the moment when she stands up to the abusive father of this child who is the struggling character, who is the beast in the metaverse. And she basically stands up to him, basically ready to take the wrath in place of the son, putting herself in between. And the father just sees that, her willingness to do that, and basically is totally disarmed, which was a cool climactic moment as well. Quite a few positives for it. It did lack a little bit in a few areas. Like, I felt the U world lacked texture. Like, it's supposed to be this awesome place where you can do anything and in the virtual world, and really all you see is a bunch of buildings, downtown buildings, and people floating around between them. So it's like, what are you doing there? Are you just going from workplace to workplace?
Yeah.
Or...
Honestly, yeah, that was my main gripe with the movie as well, because there's another anime, you won't know it, I'll be surprised if you do. It's called Sword Art Online, which also deals with characters going into a virtual world. And that show had more world building for its virtual world than Belle did. And honestly, that was kind of a shame, because it was, in my opinion, like so beautiful and so different from the rest of the style that I just wanted to know more about it. But yeah, we just see guys floating around like traffic amongst a whole bunch of buildings. And, you know, maybe this is just where, like, you know, pop stars just like randomly like flash mob, and then people are like, oh, I'm just gonna go see that on my way to nowhere in particular.
I mean, I guess if it's all about seeing, you know, celebrities in amongst the flowing swarm of like avatar fish, it's something. Yeah. Something fun to do.
Maybe it's just like, maybe you is just like a really fun screensaver for your brain when you're not doing anything cool. It's just, but yeah,
or you can talk to your friends.
Exactly, yeah. Because I still think like the movie definitely had the runtime it could have to just build on some more world building for that world. Because yeah, even though like the moments where you do cut out of the world, you know, to the real life, you know, like very classic Japanese and also kind of European-esque, just looking at life as life, they're very, very nice. But once you have like that really unique concept that, again, something only animation could really do, it does feel underutilized.
And I felt the progress of the plot wasn't always organic. Like when she went into the metaverse, she immediately started singing, and that was like a main part of the plot to progress to. But I didn't feel like it was very natural. Like it just sort of happened, and there wasn't much basis behind it. Yeah, she needed a place, I guess, and she found it. I analyzed movies for the logic, and there was like when she tried to find the person who was the beast in the real world, there wasn't much to the method like to find. Like it was very like there really was no way to do that naturally. So they just kind of made it happen, and so it didn't seem to be justified very logically. But it's also always about, you know, what demographic are you trying to make the movie for, and how much suspension of disbelief and all that. And there were a few other logic issues, like really in this world, like there's only one beast. Like it was very well known that there was the beast, but of course there'd be many people going through what that one boy was going through, and so there's a little bit of dissonance there.
Yeah, and I think that honestly comes back just the world building of the U world, where it's like, oh yeah, every single person on here is a character of their own character, and apparently most of them are morally okay, except for that one guy in particular. So
Like, or emotionally
yeah,
okay, yeah.
emotionally okay. Because yeah, I honestly thought while watching, it's like, oh, this is gonna end with the Belle character reforming the Beast, and then they're gonna find another Beast character that they're both gonna reform together, but I don't think that happened, which is again just a shame on just the world building front of the virtual world. That so much more could have been done with it. Where I honestly kind of argued that this could have been a really really good anime TV series where every single episode's just a new monster they're gonna be in
Right,
secure together.
someone to find and help through their situation.
I might need to do some more research into whether or not this movie was inspired from a manga, because it could honestly have well been a series that did it, and they just took like one story from it.
I was also kind of like confused, like how do houses burn in the metaverse?
The same way houses burn in the real life. What you talking about?
With digital oxygen and digital combustion ensues, and even the violence that they have there, it wasn't they didn't really give you the rules of it. Like the Beast would fight off the soldiers, and they would show the soldiers like disappearing. Like was this like Matrix level stuff where if you die in the metaverse, you die in the real world? Or
actually,
they
that
never
one,
got in.
I mean, that one, that's just regular video game logic. You die, you just respawn somewhere else. Like,
Which takes away some of the emphasis of having any battles whatsoever, but they don't go into it, so they maybe try to skirt that, having to describe or explain it.
you know what? Fair enough. I think for that scene in particular was just okay. We just need some climactic scene where some combat actually happens in this pop star movie.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the impression I got. It was kind of those parts, especially that main soldier guy. He was very kind of flat, very one dimensional.
I mean, yeah, and so was Gaston in the original movie as well.
But Gaston had a bit more style, I would say.
I guess so. They pushed him so far into the one dimension, he exploded into like, oh, he's just a caricature of like that. In my opinion, I still like the original. I guess when I say original, but like the one that we always think about when we hear Beauty and the Beast, which is the Disney one, where I still prefer this one over to this anime of Belle. But it is, I think, just a little bit more visually spectacular.
Yeah.
It is anime, so it's a whole different genre entirely. And it does tackle a whole different, I guess, topic aside from like true love. It still has love as a main, I guess, motif or theme. I think Beauty and the Beast was a little bit more well structured, a little bit more simpler, a little bit more cleaner.
Yeah, this was going a few different places, and although it had some cool side moments too, like where the really popular girl all of a sudden faces meets her crush, the obnoxious class clown guy, which I thought was kind of unexpected and kind of unique, that they show the popular girl getting flustered. And
it's a fun C story as well to just go through the run of the movie. On a funny side note as well, I still think the original Disney Beauty and the Beast also had the same problem of a lack of world building that Belle also had. Because I always wondered, right, that did these servants in the Beauty and the Beast that have been turned into regular house kitchenware for 8 years not have any emotional breakdowns over 8 years, or losing their mortal corporeal forms?
Yeah, they never went into that.
They never went into that, because once you hit Lumiere and Cosworth, oh, they're just chilling. I feel right, I want a sequel to this movie called 8 Years a Candlestick, in the same way 8 Years a Slave was filmed.
That could get dark. That could actually be right? a much more psychological profile type movie.
Because my fan theory, there was definitely more servants in that household to begin with. The funny thing is, you don't see any soldier bodyguard characters in that show. You don't see anybody who could have been the castle guard. Because I honestly think the servants overthrew all of them in the process of year one. It was the classic, okay, the established law leadership is going to become the government of this area, and immediately that collapses.
Yeah, or maybe all of the weaponry characters went off and were like, "Oh, I don't want to hang out here in this mansion with a bunch of candlesticks. I'm going over to the armory down at the town base, army base, and going to see some action."
Oh, that'd be great. I want to see a fantasy story where it's just like a sword from the Beauty and the Beast castle is just randomly picked up by a lone adventurer.
And they go on a mission
They go on a
together,
mission
and they're
together.
like talking. This is a great
This is a
concept.
great concept. You know what? This is going to be the new script I'm writing for a fan fiction.
Maybe we'll have to make it a separate story, not a Beauty and the Beast story.
Yeah,
and
spin
maybe work on.
But yeah, on that bombshell of a new script I'm going to be writing for the next 2 weeks, the Exorcism of Emily Rose, right?
Yeah, so completely unrelated movie, but it's was the next on the list for David, who is not a horror fan. He tells me repeatedly, but he actually went and watched it.
Yeah.
So good job.
And here's the thing, right? Straight up, for any other horror fans who are also like me, or not horror fans, but I don't want to watch horror fans. This was honestly not that bad. I've watched it, and there weren't any major jump scares.
Yeah, like I'm not a horror fan either. There's very few. Like I do like a few that fall under that classification. I would say 80% of the genre I'm not a fan of. It's just not my thing. But the ones that share that one with you. So what did you think?
So again, as a person that's like horror, I was like, I'm gonna be watching this very far away. But then like very, very quickly, it turned into a legal courthouse drama movie, which is actually a genre that I do like watching. One of my favorite comedy movies is My Cousin Vinny, and that like got me hooked onto like legal courtroom dramas. But watching that and then having it also do, the horror aspect of it, it kind of felt, right, like almost, if you ever watched like the documentary TV show Mayday, the one about like airplane crashes, where they have like, the experts talking for a segment, and then they have like the actor like recreation of it. Yeah, it felt like that, right? Because the movie cut between the courthouse scene and then cut between not a recreation of Emily Rose, but like what Emily Rose was going through, constantly back and forth, which is cool. But my main gripe with it was like, in terms of a legal movie, it wasn't that good. In terms of a horror movie, it wasn't that scary. So it kind of like averaged out to a pretty like mid-level movie to me in my sense, where I'm like, I wasn't too scared, I wasn't too enthralled by legal, but I still think it was playing around with a really, really interesting concept, and that was like, is, I guess, God real?
And the fact that it is one of those that are based on a true story, and so that can then come out in that entertainment sphere where you can go and watch a movie that's scary or like plays up this event that is supposedly to have happened, makes you ask those questions.
I did look into it. I'm actually going to pull up my notes again for it. But the reality of the story is that there really was a person, not Emily Rose, not named Emily Rose, who was Anneliese Michael, German girl, right? Still around the same age, who was experiencing, I guess, demonic convulsions, the same signs of like demonic possession, right? The same concept playing around in the movie. And apparently some real priest did go in and was like, we're going to perform an exorcism on her. And they performed 67 sequential Catholic exorcism on this girl. And apparently the way she died was malnutrition. Because apparently she started refusing food, and I guess they didn't think, during the exorcism they should have fed her or something like that, which felt wrong. In the real case, the Catholic priests were actually convicted, unlike this movie where the Catholic priest was still convicted but let go.
Which is fair if someone's dying of hunger and you're not giving them food, then yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like, I want to be on your side, Mr. Catholic priest, but also, which I think during the progress of this movie, I was also asking myself that question, like, am I really siding with the Catholic priest in this situation? Because, again, going back to the legal drama, the one thing I like about legal drama is because it's all about conflict. It's all about really two diametrically opposed ideas just going at each other.
Which is fascinating when you put the supernatural in that, because demon possession has been a claim for years. Like I believe it's something real. I don't necessarily believe every case of people talking about it is real, but I believe it exists, and therefore when that supernatural part comes into exert itself in the world, and then it happens to overlap with something where someone claims legal infringement. Well, then all of a sudden you've got the supernatural making an appearance in a court of law. Like those concepts don't tend to mix.
Yeah, that, which is honestly like a pretty cool like way to see it. Like just how like this kind of evidence and this kind of information was being cross-examined by both the defense and the prosecution. Because there was one really cool scene where they brought on like a supernatural ghost expert on the trial. And technically speaking, in the legal court, she would be considered an expert, and they treat her like one. The judge was like, yeah, for this case, she is considered an expert. Even though the prosecutor was like, this is ridiculous. Which again, like, I love that argument of it. But yeah, going back to this movie as a legal courtroom movie, the thing I like about that the most is just seeing those two, the defense and the prosecution, going at each other. And I go into these movies the same way I go into like a boxing match or like any sport competition in particular, which is not invested at all. Like I don't care for either team. But in the process of watching it, I start rooting for one or the other because they just win me over by like a really smooth, they get that one good hit off. I'm like, yeah, I'm rooting for this guy for the rest of this entire match. I for legal movies, I want that scene to be a really good show of their one side's conviction or one side's intelligence or the ability to look at evidence in a way that the other side's not looking at. My cousin Vinny did that because they brought on a very unconventional expert to talk about tire tracks, and it was an amazing scene there. I also watched Few Good Men, and they won me over just through the sheer tenacity of Tom Cruise's like lawyer character. But for this one, I think the main thing that they were building off of the defense was, number one, this was a female lawyer, and she's trying to break the glass ceiling in a way, which is cool. The other way was this girl was an atheist defending for a person who was a man of God, which is a cool thing. And the other thing is they were protecting Catholic priests. I think that was the main three, like, I guess, strengths they were playing with to get you to side with the lawyer. But the prosecutor was, honestly, I was siding with him like a whole lot during the process, because again, going at it as a legal standpoint, I was like, it's cool we're talking about religion, it's cool we're talking about the supernatural, but like, would any of this be like anyways like admissible to court? And like I actually sided with his like whole personality, where he was a man of God but he was a man of facts. And like the prosecutor, yeah, so I was like, I like this guy like a lot more than the protagonist. And for a movie standpoint, I honestly think that might be a weakness of it, where it's like I like the antagonist like so much more than the protagonist because they seem like that extra bit more competent.
Was it the case that the prosecutor was like a Protestant? Was it going into? It's been a long time since I've watched this movie, actually, so I can't remember a lot of the details. But was it going a little bit into that end of things?
Yeah, because like he always like I think he established himself as some form of religious. I believe it was Christian. And like he was examining the Catholic priest, and was like, I'm a man of God as well, right? But I'm also a man of facts. And the facts in this case was that, Emily Rose died because of the Catholic priest's negligence. And like I was like looking at that argument, I was like, I mean, in a sense, he wasn't being negligent because he was trying his best to actually cure Emily Rose in a way he thought Emily Rose could be cured, in a way that Emily Rose believed that she could be cured. And she also had the consent of the parents as well. But again, like, she died, and I don't know. I was still left, like, I kind of would have, like, I would have spoiled the end of the movie here. The jury ended up siding with the prosecution. They actually did convict the Catholic priest. But because the Catholic priest's story was so, I guess, moving, and it didn't feel like he deserved, like, that much harder time, they had him not serve out any jail. Apparently, they went with something called time served, which was almost like in the sense of like community service, where it's like you had to, I forget what the actual legal of it is called, but essentially because he already spent some time in jail during the events of the trial, they considered that his jail punishment, and therefore the moment he got convicted, he got let go. Which honestly, like, I don't know, it felt like such a shoehorn in, Because the one thing I don't think that the show did too well, for a person who might not be religious at all, was fully siding with the Catholic priest 100% through the entire events of the show. We just
Like they should have made that a clear protagonist kind of situation. Is that what you're saying?
No, because they fully side with the Catholic priest 100%. They wanted to paint him in as much as good light as possible, which is interesting because the lawyer character, the protagonist, is atheist. But like, I don't think she was questioning like her religion at all. She wasn't questioning the legitimacy of this Catholic priest at all. She never even felt like, she even like made it very clear that in her experience that she was defending actual criminals in her career. But I don't think she ever made a point like, oh, I'm now defending a person I don't believe at all. Which is the same as, you know, a lawyer convicting, trying to defend a person who is very much guilty. And I don't think I really saw that internal conflict in this movie too much explored, which I think would have helped better with its theme of, like, is God real? If there was just a little bit more internal conflict.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Story comes from conflict, so you're noticing an area where they failed to maximize some of that dramatic conflict that they could have put in.
Because it not only is just lost story, but I think it was just showing the director's bias a little bit in terms of just religion. Which again, you know, if you're presenting the argument of is God real and you're making a very definitive claim on it, I kind of like, again, I'm a man of facts. I kind of think in that argument of God is real, I think the main thing is God may be real, which is actually what they did end up going with in the end, which is what I kind of do agree with, because the defense lawyer's main argument there was like, there are no facts in this case. The facts in this case should be that we don't know anything, and that everything should be possibilities. That we can't definitively prove that Emily Rose was not possessed and that she was not suffering for this, right? Which again, cool, a great argument to base it off of.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the arguments themselves, I mean, we live in a country where there's religious freedom and there's different views, and this is a topic where you don't know like from a scientific perspective, you can't prove the supernatural. And so, you know, people should be allowed to conduct their religious rites, you know, especially with consent and all that. Absolutely. The problem comes in where if proper care isn't taken with those rites, like they're from that, you know, historical legal side of things, makes sense that there would be a court case. But then I guess the bigger question that we're discussing here is, how does it work as a film?
And I think, again, like, it was dancing around it. It was, you know, there were a couple good hits here and there. But honestly, I think the main, like, weakness honestly just had to have been that courtroom setting. Because there was this one scene there where it was like, I think it was around the midpoint, where this unknown new witness to Emily Rose's exorcism was like, hey, I'm here to also help testify. And I got all the information. I'll be a key witness. I'm going to help you break this entire case. And then, you know, the lawyer's like, oh my gosh, great. We're going to see you in a couple days. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, this guy is going to die. Like, in some manner or fashion, this witness is going to die in some way. And he does. And I felt no emotion. I think it's like that kind of, it's a movie that is just so bogged down with kind of like, bad is a very, very hard word to use in it, but like a very weak courtroom, like legal movie, and also kind of like a weak horror movie. Even though it's like such a good theme, it's just bogged down by just the form that it chose to apply it to.
Like that's one of the things they told us at school, actually, was nowadays you have to span genres, and there's actually a lot of good potential to span genres, but you can also mess it up.
Yeah. Because again, like I said, as a person who loved legal dramas and legal courtroom stuff, I wasn't too enthralled. And a person who is scared from horror movies for the fact that they are very scary, I didn't find it that scary. Which is why I was able to watch this movie kind of,
Just still, you know, good job for getting your feet wet in the horror.
I'm not lying. I was very, very, very scared during the bits where they're doing the recreation, where Emily Rose is spazzing out and she's seeing demonic figures. I'm like, oh, that's some scary. I don't want to see that. But if it was like full on like the demon like jumped out of Emily Rose's chest, I would have stopped watching the movie. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, the there's it's amazing. Like there's movies that can make us feel uncomfortable, and it's just part of our human makeup.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
It actually, like, I'm not gonna lie, it got to a point where I'm like, I kind of wanted the movie to jump scare me, because like there's always that sound. There's always that sound in every single horror thriller, where it's just a violin followed by long periods of like silence, where I'm like, this is where it's gonna happen. It's gonna be a very, very large dun, and then something's gonna happen, and I'm gonna piss my pants. But it never happened, and so I'm like, this movie is literally just doing like the horror movie of like edging, of like it's like, come on, just hit me with the actual thing, so I can actually be scared. But no. So I was actually angry at this movie. I'm not gonna lie.
But it made you tense.
It made me, and I just wanted it to be relieved, and it wasn't. I said this before with horror movies, that when a horror movie does become an action movie, I'm super in. And when they're actually doing the final Exorcism of Emily Rose, I'm like, this is a really, really cool action scene. I have to give it points for that. Where it's like, you know, the swirling and the lightning and the wind and the, you know, it was great. And honestly, props for the actress for actually pulling off that role really well. She performed Caesar/demonic possession, you know, pretty well. I kind of hope that she was an actual gymnast instead of an actual actress who was forced to learn how to become a gymnast for this movie.
Did you look into it? Did you know?
I did not. I kind of want to look into it now. If the actress is like a trained contortionist.
You never know.
Exorcism, Emily Rose. Okay, so the main actress is Jennifer Carpenter, trained at Juilliard. And I'm not seeing anything about like gymnast. I guess she just had to do it. I mean, she's very flexible. I'm just seeing videos of her just doing yoga. So maybe yoga, like regular yoga-ing, allows you to...
Yoga definitely could make someone flexible.
I would suppose so. Well, there you go. Oh, she starred in like a couple of other supernatural films after that. She was in Dexter and also the sequel, and yeah, just a lot of horror movies.
When you have one success, then you kind of have more opportunity in that genre.
But yeah, I guess to round it off as like a final like button on this, and also just to finish talking about Emily Rose, and that one of my other gripes with it was the fact that when it came to presenting both the prosecutor and the defense presented one argument, which is like, this is how events played out, and the prosecution did the same thing with the same like reenactments, like this is how things played out. One of them showed that Emily Rose was suffering from, you know, demonic possession. The other one was like, okay, but also I have these court records here that show that she was suffering from epilepsy or something like that, where it's like, okay, I kind of wish that the presenting of the facts was the prosecutor side first, followed by the defense, because like the fact of like hard evidence so heavily disproves the exorcisms for me, where it's like, then why did I ever even watch Emily Rose do all that when I now know that she was epileptic? It wasn't even revealed to the end, where it was like, we're kind of disproving the fact that she's epileptic. Where it's like, I kind of want like your opinion, like, you know, the presenting of facts and logic in a story. Because, like, for me, in that movie...
Like, they could have maybe presented that earlier and made it more of a, how do we view the supernatural aspects when there's a very physical condition that she has. I
mean, in a sense, because, like, I almost attributed that presenting of facts from the prosecution as almost Deus Ex, in a way. Where it's like, okay, here's another scene where Emily Rose has now the holes of Jesus in her hands, like the crucifixion, right? And it's like, oh, this is a proof that she was, you know, she was there, she saw God. But then the prosecution's like, well, actually, you didn't know this, at least the audience, but she actually impaled her hands on barbed wire fence that was wrapped around the perimeter of the family home. Which honestly, in the credit of the movie, you actually do see blood on the barbed wire fence at the very beginning. You just don't know why it is. But I think it's so far between that it's very easy to forget that scene actually happened. So it still felt like completely new information revealed. I guess in a sense, courtrooms also divulge into mystery. And in mystery, it's it's sometimes very easy to just say, like, here's just a key piece of information I'm just going to drop into this part of the movie because it's convenient for me. Whereas I kind of like it when a mystery movie in a courtroom presents all of its facts and all of its information right away, and then has someone cross-examine it or investigate or collect more evidence to then move the jigsaw pieces into the correct framing.
Yeah, you need the right setup, because it's okay for it to be a reveal, like a kind of like if you have a courtroom movie and you want kind of a gotcha moment or something like that is, to me, it fits with the genre. But you want to be the most fair to your audience, where if depending on how much you give away, you can still set things up to some extent. But again, I haven't watched it in a long time, so I don't know if they would have had a kind of an alternative way to set that up.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why, like, I'm hesitant to give Emily Rose that ding, because, like, I think the main problem with it was because it was divulging into two different genres. Because the way it does open, the way I would expect, like, a mystery to open, where it's like we see, like, you know, the scene of the crime, you know, like we actually see the crime being committed out, where we see all the evidence being in, all the suspects and all that stuff, and the moments right after. But what Emily Rose does is it really divulges straight into horror, where it gives you a very uneasy aspect. Emily Rose is already dead. More questions are raised than answered. The things that are being set up is like something really, really bad has gone on. Let's investigate. But we don't actually get the whole investigation process right away, I don't think. So, yeah, I think it just really was just the fact that it was playing around with two different genres. That mystery aspect that I love wasn't really there. In terms for a horror movie feel, that, again, wasn't too scary. In movies as a whole, I value setup, especially after going through film school.
Definitely one that made you think along the way too, which is cool. It's a cool context to have for a film. It's certainly, when you talk about God in general these days, one of the main questions or problems people have is, well, if God is real, why isn't he more obvious? Or, like, why isn't there more things that he does to make himself known? Like, why does he have to be so hidden? And that's kind of what I think some of the struggle with the courtroom side brought up. For me, it's never been too much of a problem, because people who can see that there's a lot of supernatural qualities in the world, like creation and how massive the universe is, and that it had a beginning, and there's all this evidence that is supporting evidence. There's always an alternative explanation. Yeah. So whether you call it conclusive, it's still supporting evidence that something massive was created, and therefore it stands to reason that there was a creator that was outside of the physical.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot that, for people who are able to see things that way, then there's evidence. And then there's also a reason why God would choose to stay hidden, if this is kind of like a big test, like something where he wants to see who's willing to devote themselves to him, the source of goodness, versus kind of keep life to themselves, kind of save, either give yourself to God or keep it for yourself, your life. And then that makes sense that he would have to be hidden for that kind of thing, to see who would love him for himself, for his goodness. The side of you that I think people definitely want to hear when it comes to, how can some people believe?
Here's what I actually think. I think when God, created the universe, he had that's just the universe, the story of the universe. He had amazing setup. He put in every single piece of essential information you need for the rest of the story of life and humanity, right in the Big Bang. And that we don't know why it happened, we don't know where it happened, but everything happened because of it, and we're still figuring it out. So in terms of human life as a mystery story, we're in that act of, like, the detective picking up all the pieces of evidence, putting it together, and then several, possibly potentially infinite billion years into the future, we'll get that third act scene where the detective puts it together and figures out, oh, that's what it's all about.
That is interesting. I've got some some people you'd like to watch some videos from or read some books, because that's kind of their take. Like one of them is actually a literal detective, or like a former police homicide detective, and he does some pretty cool analysis. Anyway, I'll pass that along. His name's Jay Warner Wallace.
Yeah.
Lots of videos of him.
Oh, well, to our audience, go ahead and Google him if you're curious.
Yeah, so I'm gonna give Belle I think a 3.5. Just some of the world building that they were lacking kind of brought it down, and plot stuff.
Fair enough.
But a lot of positives too.
Yeah, and I think I have to give Emily Rose about a 3 as well, just because that disjoint between the two genres it was playing around with. Again, still had a very interesting theme and moral question about life in it.
All right, well, I think that brings us to the end of episode 6/7/whatever. So, any last things to say?
I sure hope the next couple years of this, this century will go as smoothly as this one. Despite the chaos of the world currently, we'll still have movies, hopefully, if AI doesn't take over.
Hopefully, yes. Hopefully movies written by humans.
On that bombshell, go ahead and take us out, Jason.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Jay and Dave, signing off.
Yeah, and that is a wrap. Special thanks to Niranj, who made the intro and outro music for this podcast. You can find him on Instagram at his handle @NiranjD. That is @NIRANJD on Instagram.